So hi, everybody. This is Elizabeth and Elton. We're with Brightside Global Trade. And please don't forget to subscribe if you like this segment. As school, holiday, summer draws closer, one of the things that I've been very much wanting to promote is to teach children in school and the teachers about writing skills. I know we do a lot with authors and we want to promote reading, but writing is just as important. And she's written a book, so I'm going to let Andrea introduce us and tell us about some workshops, and maybe she can come back and do a workshop with our group. So welcome, Andrea, and tell us about your book.
First of all, thank you for having me. It's really a joy to be here tonight, and it's really nice meeting everybody that's on the segment. I did write a book. It's called Artfulness, and it's formula-free creative writing explorations for secondary ELA classes, which is a mouthful, as most nonfiction books tend to be. So it's not exactly going to be your hot summer read. I'm sorry to disappoint, but what I do hope is that for the teachers who are watching or anybody who helps with professional development, it actually is kind of a great summer read, because summer is literally the only time that teachers have to do their lesson planning. We like to think that they're doing it during the school year, but that's just not true. We don't have time. And so it's over the summer that we actually have a chance to reflect on what worked last year, what didn't work last year, what we want to do better. So it really is a good opportunity to take a little bit of time to step away and see what is working. One of the biggest problems I think that we have in an English class, and in fact, you actually touched on it a little where you said, we work with reading a lot. English classes work a lot with reading. We actually don't work a lot with writing, which is a shame. I mean, the segment before, we were looking at a PowerPoint, we were talking about estate planning. Everybody who's watching this is a writer, everybody. We don't think about ourselves as writers, right? And maybe we're writing a contract or a proposal or a social media posting, an Instagram caption, a headline for something. Maybe we're writing a shopping list, but everything that we're doing is writing, and everything that we do is purposeful. And we don't necessarily think about all the craft steps that go into writing, especially when we're writing these sort of mundane, boring, oh, that's just my job, that's not what I do for a living. But I can guarantee you, if you're writing a shopping list, grocery list, you might have one of those cool little shopping lists that says to buy, right? Or you might grab a Post-it note or the back of a receipt and just sort of scribble away, because you know that that's a private piece of writing. And so it doesn't matter what it looks like. But if you're writing an email to an angry client, you're going to stop and you're going to think. And you're going to say, okay, how's my tone coming across? How do I want to introduce this? What do I want to say? What's going to happen if I use this word instead of that word? And we're not consciously thinking about that in our day-to-day lives, because most of us as adults are writing constantly. And so we instinctively understand that different types of writing require different things. We pick a different genre. If you're writing a Facebook post, you have, this much space. If you're writing a tweet, you have a couple hundred characters. That's it. So you have to think about your word choice. We know how to do that, but our students don't. And our students don't think of themselves as writers, because unfortunately, a lot of what we do in school is teach them the literary analysis essay. Maybe if we're having a wild, crazy day, we'll teach them a persuasion essay or a research essay. But you'll notice that in all of those modes, we're talking about an essay. When was the last time you guys wrote an essay? Right? In the real world, it's very rare that you write an essay. And these days, you write blogs and listicles and social media posts and tweets and all this stuff. Very, very few of us actually write essays. But that's all we're teaching our students, is to write an essay. And now for those of us who graduated from an American school in, say, the last 35 years, you can probably already think to yourself what kind of an essay they taught you how to write, because we've been teaching it for at least 35 years. The 5-paragraph essay, right? That unicorn of essay writing that doesn't exist in the real world. The essay that tells you that every body paragraph has exactly 8 sentences, and that those 8 sentences follow the exact same sequence every single time. Nobody writes like that. Nobody wants to write like that, and nobody wants to read anything that's written like that. But that's what we teach our students, because there's too much curriculum that we have to cover, because teaching programs very rarely target writing instruction. When I was going through my teaching program, the writing instruction I received, and it was a very good program, but the only writing instruction I received was create a lesson plan that teaches students the difference between a semicolon and a colon. And that's important. I'm not going to argue, that's important. But it doesn't help teach us how to teach our students all the ways that they're really going to be writing in the real world. And so what I'm hoping is with this book, what it contains is a year's worth of lessons, because teachers don't have a whole lot of time. So what I'm hoping is that this takes some of that pressure off of the teachers. It's got a year's worth of creative writing lessons, and I'm using creative writing lessons because students prefer to write creatively. We all do. I mean, look at the stories that we've heard this evening, right? Everything that we've heard this evening has been presented as a story because that's what we respond to. And it doesn't matter that we're talking about nonfiction. We're still sharing our stories. And so by allowing students to share their stories, we're celebrating their voices, their way of writing, their hobbies, and their interests. And at the same time, we're teaching them the skills, the craft of writing. Why should I choose this genre instead of that genre? What happens if I change the setting? What should my character care about? What happens if somebody throws me for a loop and I suddenly have to revise everything that I started doing? Right? So we can target all of those writing skills and actually reading skills as well. But we can do it in a way that's engaging and authentic and that represents their real world and teaches them that writing is more than one thing. It's more than one voice. It's more than one genre. So that when they become the lawyers or the financial planners or the authors or the doctors or the mechanics or the zoologists or whatever it is they become, they know that they have the tools that they need to switch those modes. And they understand the way that those choices affect the way that their audience receives it. And so that's what I'm hoping with this book. There's actually not a whole lot. It's starting to grow, but there's not a whole lot of resources out there for teachers. I actually stole a line from one of my favorite authors. You got to write the book that you need, right? So this was actually, it began purely selfishly. I just needed these lessons for myself. But then when I looked at them, I thought, you know what? Other people could probably use this too. And what I hope is that it starts a conversation. I hope that it's not one person telling you how to do things. I tried to design lessons that are flexible so that teachers can actually adapt them the way they want, and that we can build up a community of educators who works to make the lessons better, make them stronger, tie them into other things so that it really becomes a part of their daily curriculum and not just that one thing they do once a year.
That's so true.
Ms. Yarbough, I have a question. I mean, I understand that in terms of many people find it incredibly difficult to express themselves and to walk and talk through in the spoken language. They probably have a great command of the English language, but when it comes to putting consecutive thoughts in order that make sense to us, it's kind of like showing up to the DMV. You get so nervous about what could happen, and things start to fall apart and there it goes. But the point of it is, is there a mechanism or process that you think could be significant in helping people put those things in order?
There's no one size fits all, especially when you're dealing with classrooms. You figure the average teacher in a public school has about 150 students that they watch every year if you're in secondary. So there's not a one size fits all approach, but I agree. What's funny is if I'm talking to my students, they can articulate their thoughts very clearly. Yeah. But you ask them to put those exact same thoughts on paper and they freeze. Oh, I can't write. I don't write. I don't know what to do. Because they're used to oral communication. And I think what it is writing requires thoughtfulness and artfulness. That oral communication, we know that sometimes we talk rough. I've probably said a handful of times while I was talking to you. Maybe I started to use the wrong word and had to back up and fix it. And so oral communication is a little bit more forgiving, right? Because we know that we're thinking and talking, and sometimes our mouth moves a little faster than our brain. And so we forgive each other for that. But in writing, the expectation is somebody took a little bit of time, right? And I think they're just not used to the fact that writing isn't clean in the first step or the second or the third or the 40th, right? That sometimes you have to go back through and fix things and make changes and get somebody's feedback and change the way that you're structuring something. And so one of the things that's really important for this book, one of the approaches that I use is it's a weekly writing program, and it fits right into the core English instruction. This is not a creative writing class. This is your regular English class. And every Wednesday, they know that it's a writing Wednesday. And they have a special notebook that's just for writing, and nobody sees it except them. Now, they will share their work with their teammates. They know that it's not a journal. They shouldn't expect anything to be private. They will publish their pieces by sharing it with their teammates. And then once a quarter, we have a big celebration day. They actually pick a piece and they revise it. But the beauty of the writer's notebook is they can make mistakes and there's no grade. And if you have the world's messiest notebook and you've got scribbles up the margin and doodles over here and you scratch that out and you got the arrows and all that stuff, no one cares, right? They can make mistakes. It's like a laboratory in a notebook. And I think that's potentially been the most significant change that I've noticed in my classes. At the beginning of the year, the students were terrified to write because it was going to be wrong. They knew whatever it was going to be wrong and they didn't want to try it. And by the end of the year, they're competing with each other. They're sabotaging each other. They're doing all sorts of things. They don't care. Somebody takes away a sentence from them and they're not allowed to use it and they figure out what to do to fix it. By the end of the year, they're not scared anymore.
Yeah.
Because they know that, first of all, they're going to make mistakes and everybody makes mistakes and that's okay. I write with them. I have some things in my notebook that I would be terrified if people saw because it's just so bad. Oh, it's so bad, just terrible. But I tell them that. And of course they're like, well, let me see it. But it's okay. And I think that's what's important is I think students in particular, especially this generation, they have a lot of pressure to be perfect all the time. And they're terrified of being imperfect.
That's right.
And writing Wednesdays are the definition of imperfect. They're terrible. They're awful. Everything they write is garbage. And they'll tell you by the end of the year, they're like, well, that was trash. But they don't care because they know that it's okay. Because they know that they can, if they take their time, they can go back and they can tweak it and they can fix it. And I think that just the idea that they're writing regularly, they're trying regularly, they know that not everything they write is going to get graded. That's been revolutionary. And I think that's been the most impactful part of this.
Yeah, and I think we really need to do that essay contest and bring you back when I bring the school board and we'll bring some teachers on. And we actually have Sergeant Gray that works with the military school, ROTC. And so I think we can do a lot with this book. So I'll definitely have you back. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.